Welcome back to our last session of the day because we have a lot to get through, y'all, and we don't have enough time. So with that, Rebecca, welcome.
Hello, everyone. So wonderful to be here and share space with you. I'm going to talk to you about applied neuroscience in about 60 minutes. You ready? Let's do it. Well, just a little bit about myself. So my name is Rebecca Case. I live on Fox Island, Washington, which is just outside of Tacoma. Today, I'm actually coming to you from Hawaii, where my husband and I are on vacation currently. So I'm excited to share some space with you. It is about 11 o'clock my time where I am. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also a registered yoga instructor. I just wrote a book on applied neuroscience on polyvagal informed EMDR. And that's what I am so grateful to get to talk to you about here today. I've been practicing EMDR since about 2006, and I own a EMDR training and consulting business called Case & Co. And we provide online continuing education on EMDR, advanced topics, clinical topics, and lots of clinical consultation. So if you want to check me out, you can use those links that Oyami shared. She will be offering to you all to get connected. And otherwise, let's dive in. And so today I have the honor and privilege to talk to you about polyvagal informed EMDR. And so we're going to be talking about some of the core principles of polyvagal theory and some of the core principles of EMDR therapy and how we can integrate these two models to provide a really robust framework for understanding, conceptualizing, planning clinical interventions that align with neurobiology. So that's kind of our focus here today. If you want a copy of these slides, you can scan this QR code. I know Karen and Noami will also be uploading, if you need to access the slides, a direct link in the chat box, but you're welcome to scan this QR code and you can get a copy of those slides. Now, before we dive in, let's just do a little polyvagal informed regulation and kind of using our vagal pathways to calm and ground and orient. And so I invite you to maybe just sit back in your chair or the couch or even lie down if you want and just take a moment and bring your awareness inward, connecting to the physical body. Just shift your attention from the outward to the inward. Allow your facial muscles to just release and relax. Maybe drop those shoulder blades. Arms get heavy in your lap. Just become aware of the breath as it moves in and out of your lungs. The simple practice of just mindfulness, of bringing the attention back to the body, back to the breath, is a way that we can kind of constantly be inviting interoceptive awareness throughout the day. So interoception is that ability to look within and make sense of what you're experiencing, to feel your feelings and sensations and to kind of understand them. And interoceptive skills are just really important when it comes to healing, and they're very important when it comes to polyvagal theory as well. So I invite you to just scan your surroundings and find something that feels appealing to your nervous system. It might be something that you can see. Maybe it's the light coming in through the window, or a sweet, snuggly cat, or a picture. Maybe it's a smell. You have a cup of coffee or something yummy that you're eating. Or it could even be a sound or a texture. Allow yourself to anchor on a cue of safety. You might also think of it as a cue of comfort. And allow your awareness to just anchor and rest on that cue of safety, that cue of comfort for just a couple of moments. All the while still feeling your body and noticing the breath. Now you can just allow yourself to untether from that, perhaps focus back into this space. Your nervous system is always scanning your environment. Your brain's job is to predict your safety. And so your nervous system, through a process called neuroception, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides, it's a polyvagal theory term that describes perception without awareness. So neuroception is perception without awareness. It's the capacity of your nervous system to always be looking around and checking out for cues of safety or cues of danger. And so one way we can sometimes bring in a little bit more regulation for our nervous system when we're feeling emotionally overwhelmed or imbalanced, when we're feeling messy inside, is intentionally scan our environment for a cue of safety or a cue of comfort. And that could be through any of your senses. So that might be something you see or smell or taste or touch or hear. This is one of my travel hacks, y'all. If any of you get really anxious or overwhelmed when you go to the airport, I know I always do. I'm always trying to scan for a cue of safety. And while there aren't an abundance of those in the airport necessarily, you can usually always find something, even if it's just bringing in maybe an essential oil or feeling your body, if that feels like a cue of safety. So scanning neuroception and everything we're going to talk about in our very short but meaningful time here today is all about neurobiology. This is one of my favorite quotes. I cast the brush aside, and from now on, I'll talk to the moon face to face. And the reason I brought this quote into our training today is because I think that when we really focus on how the nervous system is functioning, and we get curious about why it's doing what it's doing, we allow ourselves to get past the DSM, the medical model, beyond pathologizing, and we focus on the nervous system. We focus on it face to face with curiosity and wonder and awe. And I feel that that's a really destigmatizing, non-pathologizing way to treat clients if we're in the helping and healing profession, and to also have compassion for ourselves, because you are just your nervous system. You are your biology, and your nervous system is behind everything and every moment of your day. This framework of thinking about what is the nervous system doing? How does that explain symptoms? How does that explain clinical complaints? It's based in what we call neuro-informed counseling. So neuro-informed counseling, this is not my term. I did not make this up. It's been out there in the field for a bit. But neuro-informed counseling really asserts that you are your biology. Your nervous system dictates every moment of your day. Think about how incredibly powerful your nervous system is. It allows you to feel feelings. It allows you to experience sensations. It allows you to form memories, to recall memories. Every moment of your day is filtered, perceived, interpreted through your neurobiology. When you taste something, you're like, oh, that's so good and yummy. It's your nervous system that says, I like this. This is appealing to me. When you look in your partner's eyes and you feel warm fuzzies, or regret and resentment, depending on the day and how you two are doing, right? That's your nervous system that makes all of that possible. And so I really believe as a clinician, as a trauma therapist, that our field sometimes does our clients a disservice because it neglects to really focus significantly, poignantly on the functioning of our neurobiology and how we can understand the functioning of our neurobiology to explain clinical symptoms. So all symptoms, diagnoses, health, and wellness is all based on how well your nervous system is functioning. So the more resilient your nervous system, the healthier your nervous system is, the more health and wellness you are going to have in your life. The less health and wellness your nervous system has, the less health and wellness you will have in your life. It's a pretty direct correlation. Now, there are, of course, situations where we have a neurophysiological condition, right? Something beyond our control. It's we have a diagnosis, a disease, an injury, like a brain injury or something like that. And so our nervous system may have some challenges and, some things that are out of our control, outside of our control. But there is a great deal that we can do to create more resiliency within our neurobiology. And this is where polyvagal theory comes into play, and EMDR can also really help us in better understanding how our nervous system is functioning. And when we better understand how the nervous system works, we can work with it. So your nervous system is a very vast system. Your nervous system is made up of like 1 billion cells, 1 billion neurons. It communicates through hormones and neurotransmitters and electrical impulses that are sent between synapses. And in the field of neurobiology and neuroscience, we kind of organize the nervous system into these branches, but understand that the nervous system is one entire system. We organize it into these branches so we can understand it and study it and make sense of some of its functions. And two of the specific branches of the nervous system that we'll be talking about in our time here today include the brain, part of the central nervous system, because this is, the brain is like the driver of it all, right? It's the command center of everything. But the brain is where your memories are stored. And EMDR is all about memories and how your memories are stored. Polyvagal theory talks about a branch of the nervous system known as the autonomic nervous system. I also sometimes think of the autonomic nervous system as your automatic nervous system. Your automatic nervous system. It's really just wired to respond without conscious rational thought or logic. And the autonomic nervous system, the focus of polyvagal theory, is then broken into two additional divisions, which is your sympathetic and your parasympathetic branches of the nervous system. And we'll be talking about those here today. So when our nervous system doesn't have a lot of resiliency, when we haven't fed it the nutrients that it needs to function optimally, we all need a couple of core ingredients for like giving our nervous system the best odds. Sleep, nutrition, hydration, and relationships are some of the most important things you can do for your nervous system just to give it the best chance of success. Sleep, in fact, is the number one. Nothing else here. If you try any of these, skills or techniques with any of your clients, but they're not getting any sleep, it's probably not going to work. Sleep is the pillar of health. So when our nervous system isn't fed the nutrients that it needs, the resources it needs, when we're not caring for it, when we're not using skills that help it to regulate, to help us to get some control over some of those automatic responses that we experience with fight, flight, and freeze, we kind of feel like this inside, right? We feel really messy inside. We have lots of disturbing thoughts, like I feel out of control. What's wrong with me? I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm a terrible person. We have a lot of overwhelming feelings, emotions, like we feel overwhelmed. We feel afraid. We feel a lot of anxiety and panic and unrest. And our body feels all that too, right? We might feel really anxious and jittery or just really lack energy and be very fatigued. So it all comes down to how we interact with our neurobiology. And when we're working with trauma and resolving trauma and overwhelming stress and adversity and loss in our clients' lives, they're really coming to us because their nervous system feels like a mess, right? If their nervous system didn't feel like a mess, they wouldn't be walking in your office. They wouldn't be asking for your supports. So when we show up to our yoga therapist or our Reiki practitioner or our therapist and we say, I feel anxious, I'm having flashbacks, I cannot sleep, I'm constantly ruminating on the past, I'm overwhelmed with these terrible thoughts about myself. They're describing to you all of these symptoms and data points that the nervous system is offering that can help point us in the direction of what does this body, this physical body, need to heal. Because again, it's all about biology. So this is something that I think is really important. If there's anything you take away from this course today, is giving yourself permission to look at and understand your patients and your clients, those that you treat, and even yourself as the functioning of your neurobiology. Nobody is just depressed. Nobody is just anxious. Nobody is just, borderline or has DID for no reason. It's all about how the nervous system is functioning. The DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that we use in the mental health field to diagnose, isn't really aligned with neurobiology. It's focused on clusters of symptoms that it puts into categories and boxes and says, if you have these categories and these boxes, then it means you have this diagnosis. But it completely overrides and neglects to look at what do these symptoms mean is going on with the nervous system. Because again, going back to that quote earlier, when you can look at all those symptoms as data points, I cast the brush aside. It's kind of like I throw the DSM out the window. From now on, I'm going to talk to the nervous system face to face, because that's what it's all about. So even when we feel happy and healthy and resilient, it's like, I'm doing great in my life. That's all. Those are symptoms. Those are data points of how your nervous system is functioning. So see it all as biology and all about how the nervous system functions. So the nervous system speaks to us through physical and psychological symptoms. So when your clients are showing up and they say, I have chronic gut issues and I can't sleep and I'm feeling really anxious, hear that all is how the nervous system is speaking to you and your client in that moment. So just like when you get a cold or the flu or the stomach flu or something like that, you usually notice that you have some symptoms. And when you notice you have symptoms, it allows you to intervene and do something, right? So if you notice, I have a scratchy throat and my nose feels a little like stuffed up, I think I'm getting a cold. Maybe you make some choices. I'm going to drink some water. I'm going to get some vitamin C and I'm going to go to bed early tonight. You know what? In fact, I'm going to skip that dinner party because I don't want to get anybody else sick and I want to make sure I get plenty of sleep. So there you were able to notice those data points and you made choices to work with your body. So see the nervous system as the same. When your nervous system or your clients or your patient's nervous systems are speaking to you through physical or psychological symptoms, they are simply opportunities to intervene. When we get a cold, when we get sick, we might be frustrated. Dang it, I'm sick. Now I can't go do that thing I wanted to do. But we don't get down on ourselves like, dang it, my body sucks. It is so terrible. And that's why I got a cold. I'm a terrible person. That's why I have a cold, right? Probably not. You see, like I have a body and it gets sick. And so I have a cold. Like it just happens. So if we could treat some of our psychological, our emotional challenges similarly. Oh yeah, I have anxiety. My nervous system is anxious and upset about something. It doesn't mean anything is wrong with me. Think about how we could step away from even pathologizing ourselves. If we could just simply recognize it as like, these are just data points and an opportunity for me to intervene. In this sense, we can almost see that the pain, the anguish, the upset, the overwhelm that clients are reporting, or that even when you feel for yourself, is a portal to greater awareness and understanding. If you didn't have that anxiety, you wouldn't know that your nervous system needed something. It's simply your nervous system needing something. How many of you in the room have pets, dogs, cats, some kind of mammal? Okay. Yeah. Or maybe even a bearded dragon. Yeah. So when your pet comes up to you and, your cat starts meowing at you at like 2 o'clock, because it thinks it's dinner and you've missed dinner. Dinner's not until 5. But if it's 2 and it hasn't been fed, you know you missed dinner and it's yelling at you like it's going to starve, right? You don't look at your cat and you're like, oh, you terrible feline. Hopefully not, right? You see, like, this is a data point. My cat is communicating to me that it's hungry, right? It's just communicating through those meows and clawing at me and pawing at the door. So almost see like those emotional symptoms of like, oh, that anxiety, the depression, the dissociation, the flashbacks, the sleepless nights is the nervous system meowing or barking at you. There's my new metaphor for today. It's just saying, hey, pay attention to me. I need something. I need you to intervene. And I'm giving you these data points so you're aware that I need something. Because if you pay attention to what your nervous system needs, your life is just going to be better. So when we talk about polyvagal theory and EMDR, as we start transitioning into kind of these concepts for our time together, we're talking about stuff that gets stuck and causes us yuck in our neurobiology. So when we're talking about trauma and adversity and unresolved loss and stress, it's about experiences that get kind of stuck in your nervous system and they cause yuck. So trauma can be understood as it's adverse life experiences that have gotten stuck in your neurobiology. Like your nervous system continues to kind of get hung up or tied up on those past experiences, whether that's through reliving or things in the present that really activate and trigger you and remind you of all that yucky stuff, right? So in EMDR, we talk about the concept of memory storage. And memories are stored adaptively or maladaptively. And I'll get more into this in our following slides. But maladaptively stored memories are memories that we really target in EMDR therapy with the protocol. Maladaptively stored memories are experiences that have typically overwhelmed our nervous system and have impacted your brain's ability to adaptively consolidate that memory to a point where it doesn't bother you present day. So if you can think of a memory that causes you some upset when you still think about it, in the EMDR world, we would consider that to be a maladaptively stored memory. Adaptively stored memories are memories that really contribute to our health and wellness. And so those might be memories of, warm chocolate chip cookies and unicorn farts and rainbows and sunshine and warm hugs and things like that, right? But adaptively stored memories can also be memories of adversity that you've overcome and you've made adaptive meaning of. So when our memories are stored maladaptively, what happens is when we think about them or when something in our environment activates them, like a reminder, like you smell something that reminds you of that memory, or you see a person who was part of a yucky experience in your life, the autonomic nervous system gets hijacked. Right? So it starts activating as if it was the past with symptoms of fight and flight and mobilization or symptoms of shutdown and immobilization. So this is what we're going to talk more about here. So polyvagal theory is a robust theoretical model that was developed by Stephen Porges based on decades of his research. So Stephen Porges started researching heart rate variability back in like 1969, 1970. And over decades of time, as he researched and gathered information about how the heart works and how the nervous system and the heart work together and how all of that relates to our emotional health and wellness, he developed what we know today to be polyvagal theory. And polyvagal theory really provides an in-depth framework to understand how the autonomic nervous system works through the mediation of the vagus nerve. So polyvagal theory, he named it poly because the theory has multiple hypotheses and it talks about multiple nerves that make up the vagus nerve essentially. So the vagus nerve is the second longest nerve in your body. It's not the longest. Your sciatic nerve is actually the longest nerve in your body. And it has a lot of nerve endings, and it's actually a bundle of multiple nerves. So it's not just one nerve, it's a bundle of nerves. And the vagus nerve mediates the responses of the three circuits of your autonomic nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system is made up of the ventral circuit, which when this circuit or this pathway is kind of leading the way and has the most energy, this is like the just right zone, like everything's working optimally and you feel pretty good. The sympathetic circuit is the mobilizing circuit. So when that circuit gets activated, we usually have a lot of energy that gets kicked up. And then the dorsal circuit is a circuit of immobilization. So in that circuit, we might feel kind of flat and tired and still. And so the vagus nerve orchestrates kind of the responses of these three autonomic pathways. You can almost think of the vagus nerve as like a conductor of a symphony or an orchestra, right? So the vagus nerve is up there at the conductor stand, you know, and it cues the horns and it cues the clarinets and it cues the bass or what have you. And so the vagus nerve is what really activates these various circuits or pathways of your autonomic neurobiology. Now, each of these circuits comes with their own kind of flavors or qualities, I would say. So the ventral circuit, sometimes I think of ventral and ventana in Spanish, which means window. So the ventral circuit is where the window of tolerance lies. I know for those of you therapists in the room, you've probably heard of the window of tolerance. The window of tolerance is kind of like the ideal zone, right? The just right zone, right? And so when our ventral circuit is leading the way, when it has the most energy, this is where we feel safe and connected. And we're regulated, our emotions and our physical sensations are regulated. We can manage stress and we can cope efficiently. Okay, so it's kind of the Goldilocks zone you can consider. I am very rooted in my ventral circuit right now. I feel very much in my window of tolerance with you all. The sympathetic circuit, you can also think of as your hyperarousal circuit. So this is your circuit or your pathway of mobilization. So this is an energizing circuit. And when this circuit gets activated, you have like a flood of energy. Now, this circuit can be activated just because you're living your life, but when it gets activated out of fear, out of danger, when your nervous system perceives there's some kind of danger cue or a threat, it takes on special flavors. And so when this circuit gets activated out of threat or fear or alarm, this is where we can feel anxious and restless. We might feel panic and racing thoughts and irritability. Now, your sympathetic circuit can be leading the way, and you're not in a fear response. So think about when I go to the gym and I work out, I need some sympathetic energy, right? To like get through my workout, to have the energy to get through my workout. Ideally, your sympathetic nervous system also activates a bit more when you wake up in the morning so you can get out of bed. And hopefully it decreases a little bit at night so you can go to sleep. So these three circuits that I'm describing here, they're not on or off, they're not good or bad, they're all good actually. They've all served you because you're all still here and alive. It's just about which one is leading the way, which one has the most energy, and is it activated out of fear and alarm? Because when they get activated out of fear and alarm, they take on different flavors. So the final circuit that Porges describes in his theory is the dorsal circuit. And the dorsal circuit is the circuit of hypoarousal or immobilization. And so this is where we feel a loss of energy, which you need when you go to sleep at night, right? So when you can lie on a massage table and get a massage and you feel really still, maybe even fall asleep on that massage table, or when you go to sleep at night, your dorsal circuit is giving you is a bit more activated than it maybe was around noon during the day. But when that circuit gets activated out of fear, this is where we go into shutdown. We can feel helpless. We can feel hopeless. We might feel dissociative. We feel collapsed. We might feel depressed. And we lose motivation here. Now, these circuits also all have an effect on your physical body. So when we go into sympathetic overwhelm, our digestive system gets depressed. We can get dry mouth. Our immune system gets depressed. Your blood flow changes, your breathing changes, your heart rate speeds up, and your breathing gets more shallow. When you go into that dorsal circuit, you tend to go into a place where maybe your body's trying to hoard calories. And so you might find you have a lot of cravings there. You really want to snack a lot. You're like, I just want to eat a bunch of ice cream and a bunch of bread when you're in the dorsal circuit. We can feel really tired here. It's really hard for us usually to make connection with people in the dorsal circuit. Like this is where our face kind of goes flat and it's hard to make eye contact with others. Our vocal tone tends to get kind of flat in the dorsal circuit. Our immune system also gets depressed. So these circuits are all good and they're necessary. You use them all the time. You're using all three of them right now as we speak. But when they get activated out of fear or alarm, they change their flavor and they change how our neurophysiology functions. So your body was designed to have these survival circuits to get you through something that was imminently, dangerous. And then you go back to baseline. Hopefully you return back to the ventral window of tolerance. This is where we thrive. This is where your cells can go through regeneration. This is where we get the best sleep. This is where our relationships are best. Our digestion works the best here. Our breathing and our heart rate are kind of in ideal zones. So think about if your body is constantly, chronically living in sympathetic or dorsal states, the long-term effect that could have on your physical body. If your digestion is always getting changed, it's shut down, or you're feeling really hungry because of what's activated here, your immune system is on and off and on and off and on and off because you're getting so activated in your autonomic nervous system, we can develop a lot of chronic health conditions because your body's just never given the resources or the opportunity to be in kind of a safe zone where it can do all of the things it needs to do in a way that best supports your health and wellness. So again, the vagus nerve is the second longest nerve in the body. It innervates a lot of places in your body. So the vagus stands for wanderer or vagabond because this nerve gets around. It goes a lot of places. So it connects to your face and your eyes and your inner ear and your throat, your heart, your lungs, and all of your digestive organs. And your nervous system uses this kind of concept that Porges calls neuroception, which is perception without awareness. And it's always scanning your environment for cues of danger and safety. And based on what it perceives, it can automatically cue those defensive circuits out of fear or alarm without your conscious awareness. So it's why we can so quickly, we hear a song and it reminds us of some time in our life. And all of a sudden we're back to like being 16 years old. We just get swept away because neuroception was just listening for that song and just took you away into your memory networks. And it's the vagus nerve that ultimately cues an increase in sympathetic or a decrease in sympathetic, an increase in dorsal activation in response to those cues of safety or danger. So with polyvagal theory, we can really understand symptoms as neurophysiological processes. So your client who comes to you and says, I have chronic gut issues, I sleep terribly, I'm always restless, they're sitting there and like they can hardly sit still, kind of, right? Their face looks really tense. You can use this knowledge to read, my client is really stuck in sympathetic activation. Those are all symptoms that go along with like a chronically hijacked sympathetic circuit. Or your client comes in and they're talking like this and they can kind of hardly make facial or face eye contact with you. They're always looking down. They're saying that they've gained a lot of weight lately. They don't have energy. They don't have goals. They can hardly get out of bed. You're hearing my client stuck in a dorsal circuit. And so understanding these pathways helps us to conceptualize, and then we can plan interventions. We can provide this psychoeducation to our clients as well to help them understand you are your nervous system, and all of these symptoms and everything you're saying you're experiencing can be related completely back to how your neurophysiology is doing. Now, polyvagal theory also talks about the social engagement system, which I just don't have time to get in here today, but the social engagement system is very, very important. It's our unique code of connection. Human beings are wired to connect. You are born to connect. That's how we survive. We have zero ability to survive or regulate ourselves on our own without a caregiver. And so we have this capacity of co-regulation. And so co-regulation is our ability to regulate one another when we're in distressed states. And so when we, as the helpers, the professional, the healer, the therapist, the Reiki practitioner, whatever seat you're sitting in as a helper, when we are connected to our ventral circuit, when we show up to our sessions in our window of tolerance, we can be helpful and supportive, and we can help co-regulate our clients. If we show up in sympathetic or dorsal shutdown, we're not going to be very co-regulating because our nervous system is going to be swept away. So polyvagal theory helps us also understand the power of our neurobiology to serve as a life raft and to support our clients. So polyvagal theory helps us understand how the autonomic nervous system functions. It really describes the states of fight, flight, freeze, and collapse as we've kind of understood them in the healing world, because those are all processes that are produced by autonomic functioning. And we can use lots of skills to regulate the autonomic nervous system. So grounding and breath work and mindfulness and meditation and yoga and massage and all the things, DBT, CBT skills, ACT skills, all the things can help to regulate the autonomic nervous system. But if all we're focused on is regulating the autonomic nervous system, we're not going to touch the memory. The memory will not change. Regulation and regulating doesn't change the storage of memories. And that's what EMDR is after, actually rewiring how memories are stored. So the EMDR model was developed by Francine Shapiro. Francine Shapiro passed away in 2019. But EMDR therapy is an entire theoretical framework. It's not just an intervention or a tool in your toolkit. It is an entire theoretical framework for understanding how memories are stored and how the storage of memory contributes to health and wellness, disease, or pathology. So the EMDR model talks about maladaptively and adaptively stored memories through what Francine labeled the adaptive information processing model. AIP is what we sometimes refer to it as. And the AIP model really describes the role of memory as it relates to health and wellness. So when we have adaptively stored memories, we can call them up in our mind, and we feel all the qualities of ventral when we experience them. Those adaptive memories contribute to how we perceive and understand ourselves and others in the world. And if it's an adaptive memory, it's contributing to our perception and our behaviors in a really adaptive, resilient, kind of positive way. Maladaptively stored memories, on the other hand, are those memories that have gotten stuck and are causing yuck. They're causing the autonomic nervous system to get hijacked when those memories get triggered or activated. So maladaptively stored memories cause us a lot of suffering, a lot of pain. When they get activated, we might feel a lot of anxiety or depression or overwhelm or doubt or just cringe thinking about them. And we know that they're maladaptively stored because of how the autonomic nervous system responds to them. So memories can get maladaptively stored because your nervous system gets overwhelmed. So we face an experience that feels overwhelming and scary and traumatic and like it's, imminently dangerous to us. And that can negatively impact our brain's ability to just process and integrate memories and information. Certain pathways we need to integrate memories get blocked and shut down because the nervous system is so overwhelmed. Let's experiment a little bit with this idea of adaptive and maladaptive memories, looking at the link between our memories and our autonomic nervous system. And I'm not going to ask you to think of anything triggering here. We're going to think of food. So I hope that you don't think of a food that comes with some kind of trauma or anything like that. So I invite you first to think about a food that you do not like, something you dislike. And notice what happens in your body. Like, how do you know you don't like that food? What happens inside? Yeah. Okay, now think about a food that you love, something really yummy. And how do you know you like it? What tells you inside? I see some of you smiling, like, ooh, I'm really hungry. Yeah, if any of you want to just share in the chat so you can share with each other. But this is just a very simple example of, so that food I asked you to think of was a memory, right? You have a memory of eating that food, right? So you probably pulled up that food from memory. And then it was your autonomic nervous system that told you how you feel about that food, right? So how many of you noticed, like, when you think about the food you liked, that your mouth started watering or salivating maybe? Or maybe your tummy grumbled? You just felt like some warmth. Or, or somebody felt nauseous, right? You think about a food you don't like and you feel nauseated, like, ugh, you just kind of, right? So it's your autonomic nervous system that's telling you, I don't like that. Okay. So here we see this direct link, the intimate, intertwined relationship between memory and autonomic processes. You don't just think your memories, you feel your memories. And this is kind of the heart of trauma treatment, right? So in EMDR therapy, we focus on finding those memories that are causing the nervous system to get hijacked. So what this looks like in real life is, right, your client was like, I went to the grocery store and I ran into my perpetrator and I ran out of there and I sat in the car and I was having a panic attack and I was having flashbacks and I wasn't okay for like days, right? Your client is saying, I was out living my life. I saw someone that triggered my memories of the terrible things that happened with them. And my autonomic nervous system got hijacked for days, right? This is the relationship, the dance between memory and autonomic processes. They're completely combined and intertangled, right? Versus if somebody said, I went to the grocery store and I saw my perp and I was like, not today. And I was fine, right? I breathed through it. I used my skills. I decided to like go the other way because I didn't want to interact with them, but I was okay. Your client's saying like, I've healed, right? Like, I don't like that person, but I didn't get swept away. So in EMDR, we identify those specific memories that contribute to the present day symptoms and dis-ease, the dis-ease. And we reprocess those memories with our protocol, EMDR being an evidence-based therapy, a first-line treatment for trauma and unresolved adverse experiences. We process those memories to a point of adaptive resolution. So your client says, I think about what my perpetrator did. And it's not about forgiveness. You don't have to forgive people. It's not about forgetting. It's just your client says, oh my gosh, it just doesn't bother me. This is the power of EMDR. When we fully reprocess a memory, your client is essentially saying, my autonomic nervous system doesn't get hijacked. I think about that now, and I just feel neutral about it. Like, that's healing. I can think about that memory, that experience from my ventral window of tolerance. So without a method to reprocess our memories, polyvagal inspired techniques will have limited effect, because essentially all you're doing is you're teaching somebody to thwart or dampen or regulate their autonomic process, right? But you're not actually addressing the memory that is causing the autonomic nervous system to get hijacked. So I see regulation therapy is really important, but it's kind of a band-aid, right? It isn't really helping people heal and rewire their nervous system. And in EMDR, without focusing on autonomic processes, if we only focus on memories, we're kind of missing half of the neurobiological show, because it's not just what happens in your head, it's about what happens in your body, right? So healing, I know that probably those of you in the room who are healers or have been healing yourself and know a lot about, healing techniques, we often talk about top down and bottom up techniques, right? So bottom up techniques tend to be more somatically focused techniques, and top down techniques tend to be kind of more cognitive interventions. And sometimes out there in the counseling world, we kind of give like top down techniques a bad rap, right? Like cognitive behavioral therapy is, like it's all about the body. But guess what? Like, your nervous system is both. You need both. You need bottom up techniques and top down, because your brain is a very powerful organ, and it's kind of running the show. And your body is also very powerful. So when we integrate polyvagal and EMDR, I really believe we have a robust model for looking at both top-down and bottom-up processes, because it's about the mind and the body. It's not just about the body, it's about the mind and the body. Okay, this is not a plug for Game of Thrones. If any of you are Game of Thrones fans and you recognize this, if you're not a Game of Thrones fans, that's okay. Don't worry about it. But this is just a little analogy. So these are two photos from Game of Thrones, and this is Khaleesi, who was a dragon rider. She's the dragon queen, and this is one of her dragons, Drogon. And in this first image here, Drogon had just saved Khaleesi from a perilous threat, and it was the first time Khaleesi had ever ridden Drogon, and they're on top of a hill, and Khaleesi and Drogon don't have like a rider dragon tamer relationship. Like they don't know how to work together, right? And so Drogon has saved Khaleesi, thank goodness, but now she can't get him to go anywhere. I mean, if you look at this, does this look like the way to ride your dragon? Probably not facing backwards, right? So this is like at the beginning of the series, and Drogon ends up abandoning Khaleesi on top of a hill, and all kinds of things happen because she didn't know how to ride her dragon. Now, this picture is from the end of the series where Drogon and Khaleesi have a very symbiotic relationship, and they can predict each other and sense each other, and they move together as like one organism. And they can conquer the world, like literally, the series. So the reason I'm sharing this is because when we all have a dragon. Whether or not you want it, you have a dragon, and it is your autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system just reacts and responds without your conscious direction unless you learn how to tame it. And you can do that with your mind. So when we use EMDR therapy and polyvagal theory, it's essentially we're learning how to tame our dragon. We are all dragon riders. But when our autonomic nervous system is out of control because of maladaptively stored memories, or we just haven't learned ways to kind of regulate and work with our autonomic nervous system, life feels really messy and scary and overwhelming. And so really the goal of healing is to learn how to tame your dragon, to learn how to tame your autonomic nervous system. So an effort to be able to process memories and EMDR, and just, as you're thinking about working with clients in your healing practice and your helping profession, we want to think about to be able to actually process and metabolize maladaptively stored memories, we do need to stabilize the nervous system somewhat. So there's some kind of preparation or stabilization techniques that we need to use so the neurophysiological processes are there to actually integrate and desensitize maladaptively stored memories. One of the common things in EMDR is that people will come to EMDR therapy, or clients will seek out EMDR therapy, and they think that EMDR is just an intervention. It's like, just fix me, make it better. I don't have to feel feelings. It's like magical, right? Like you just kind of erase my memories. No, it's not. Or sometimes therapists come to, EMDR training at Case & Co., and they think that EMDR is just an intervention. It's just a tool in your toolkit. And it's not. Think of what hurts and follow my fingers with eye movements is usually what people think of when they think of EMDR. And guess what? That's only one of the phases. And there are 8 phases of EMDR. So EMDR is 8 phases of therapy. And desensitization is only one of them. And that's the phase where we focus on the memory and we add eye movements to help reprocess the memory. But in polyvagal informed EMDR, we start with building safety and case conceptualization. Phase 2 sometimes takes a really long time. And this is where we're really building autonomic resiliency. So we're teaching our clients some skills so that they can kind of get a hold of their dragon. Because if you don't have any preparation skills, if you don't have enough autonomic resiliency, you won't be able to reprocess memories. It'll just be too much. Your nervous system will get completely flooded or overwhelmed or kind of hijacked, and those pathways that we need to actually integrate the memory will shut down. In these phases, assessment, desensitization, installation, and body scan, these are the phases where we really specifically hone in on a specific memory that the client, the therapist have identified are causing a lot of the yuck that's stuck and causing yuck. And we reprocess that memory to a point of adaptive resolution. What I mean when I say adaptive resolution is that clients think about the memory and they say, it just doesn't bother me. I don't feel overwhelmed. I don't feel upset. I don't feel shut down. I really feel that window of tolerance. In so many words, they don't usually say that exactly. So EMDR is 8 phases of treatment. And when we bring polyvagal theory into this already incredible model, this evidence-based model of treatment, I think that we really round it out into an even more powerful therapeutic approach. So I also want to preface here, polyvagal theory is a theoretical model. Polyvagal is not a therapy. It helps us to understand how the nervous system functions, and then we use that knowledge and kind of plan interventions accordingly, right? But it is not a specific therapy. And polyvagal theory is not without criticism. There are some criticisms of polyvagal theory. And Stephen Porges really shares that he created this model to spark conversation. And some of the criticisms of polyvagal theory are really about some of the nuanced, like neurophysiological aspects of it. Like, is it really these 2 nerves in the vagus nerve that do this? And how did evolution contribute to everything? So it's like really in the nitty gritty details, the fine print of the theory that some of the criticisms lie. I do not think that any of those criticisms or ongoing discussions threaten at all, like using polyvagal theory as a helpful tool with your clients. So there is nothing that polyvagal theory teaches us or informs us to maybe think about or practice with our clients that would ever be considered harmful. I think that it gives us a really great way to understand how the nervous system functions. And again, when you can understand how the nervous system functions, you can work with it. Now, EMDR is a therapy. It is a therapeutic model. It is evidence-based, and it is a first-line treatment for PTSD. What does that mean? It means that if somebody has a diagnosis of PTSD, kind of the top 3 treatments that are recommended for trauma treatment are prolonged exposure, CPT, and EMDR therapy. So EMDR is very much supported in the research for trauma. It's also supported for lots of other common conditions like anxiety, addictions. There's some really interesting research growing on its effectiveness with depression. It's really effective with grief and loss, performance enhancement, chronic pain. So EMDR can work with a lot of things beyond a PTSD diagnosis. So when we bring polyvagal theory into EMDR, we can use polyvagal to guide our use of skills, and we can use neural exercises that help to tone the vagus nerve, which helps us to become more resilient. So what does that mean? So if I were to say, you know what, I am going to learn to bench 100 pounds. And I was like, I never go to the gym. I don't work out. I live on fast food and chocolate, and I can lift maybe 10 pounds. I got to do some exercises to get to my goal, don't you think? Right? Like I got to engage in some training. I'm probably going to have to change my diet a little bit. I need to get to the gym and start working out. If I was only able to lift 10 pounds and I went and tried to lift like 100, when I couldn't, I could cause injury for myself, couldn't I? Like I pull my back, I could throw something out. Yeah, it would not be good, right? Versus I go to the gym, I start working out, I follow a routine, right? And I tone my muscles, and then I can lift whatever weight I want to lift. Okay. So you can think about similar, this is a metaphor, and metaphors are usually always wrong, but they're just used to like understand and conceptualize, right? So you could think of your vagus nerve in a similar way. I'm not saying your vagus nerve is going to look like your bicep, okay? But you could think of your vagus nerve as you can exercise your nervous system. And so if your client's like, I want to be healthy and happy, and your client's like, and I don't sleep very well, I don't prioritize my sleep, I live on fast food, I never move, and I sit looking at like Candy Crush all day long. You're like, okay, well, we got to get a training program on board, don't we? Right? Like that's not going to get you there. So there's lots of things that we can use in therapy, and I promise that you are already doing with your clients that ultimately help to tone the vagus nerve. And a more toned vagus nerve means that a toned vagus nerve can more easily increase or decrease responses of the autonomic nervous system when we need it to. So if you have a toned vagus nerve, if you've been working out your neurobiology, right, taking your nervous system to the gym, which, by the way, going to the gym and working out is a great way to work out your vagus nerve. But when you then feel anxious because, like, oh gosh, I have this thing coming up, I got to make a public speech next week at a wedding and I'm so anxious, you're going to be able to more likely identify I'm feeling anxious and use skills to calm the anxiety than if you didn't have a toned vagus nerve. Okay, so toning your vagus nerve is a way to work out your nervous system, and we can do this with what Porges calls neural exercises. So just like your exercises at the gym, there are things we can do, like coping strategies and skills and habits and behaviors that help us to tone the vagus nerve. And I think of something called the preparation hierarchy, which I developed. And it's a way to kind of conceptualize the sequential skill sets that need to be developed to develop a really resilient nervous system. Okay, so these happen in order. So we have to start by learning using skills that help us just to be safe enough to feel. Because if we believe that we're not safe enough to feel in our life, like maybe life is very unsafe and you can't feel your feelings about it. I'm sure we've all been through something before where we tried to compartmentalize how we felt about something because we had to get through something until it was like, okay, when I get to Tuesday, then I can have like the breakdown. Right? But like, I got to get through this thing today first. So I'm going to push all that aside. But we have to have enough safety in our life to feel our feelings, and we have to believe that it's safe enough for us to feel our feelings. Sometimes we don't think it's safe enough to feel, and we actively avoid feeling our feelings. You're not going to be able to heal if you can't feel. You got to feel to heal. Once we can feel, and when we're safe enough to feel, then we start to build the skills of being able to notice and name. So can you notice your body and the body sensations you're experiencing, and can you put some language on them? That's a skill of interoception. And if we can't notice our body and we can't notice and name our feelings and sensations, it's going to be really hard to heal because we don't have a way, like a language, to work with the body and our experiences inside. Then we learn to feel and flex. So feel and flex is the ability to sit with and feel feelings and sensations, and then use skills to flexibly navigate the nervous system. So for example, if I notice that I'm feeling anxious at the airport, which I always feel anxious at the airport, I now have a number of skills that I use. I can notice and name that I'm feeling anxious, and then I use skills to try and dampen my sympathetic arousal that always happens when I go to the airport, right? And ultimately, when you have all of these skills in place and you can kind of navigate this with some self-efficiency, you end up being able to trust the process of feeling, of healing, and of living. So I have a lot of skills in my toolbox. I am safe enough to feel, and I believe that I can feel feelings and sensations. I have lots of skills to notice and name my feelings and sensations. I can sit with distressing feelings and good feelings. I have distress tolerance, and I can use skills to flexibly kind of navigate what happens inside. And all of that ultimately allows me to trust that I can do hard things. I trust that the next time something traumatic happens in my life, and I'm sure it will, because this is life, I trust that I have a nervous system that I can rely on that will get me through it. But if I didn't have all those skill sets in place, life would feel very precarious, wouldn't it? I would be maybe terrified to live. I'd be kind of trying to wall myself off and avoiding experiences because I just don't trust my ability to get through and navigate hard times. That also makes therapy, that also makes healing really hard, right? So your clients who come to you and they're kind of like always avoidant of feeling feelings or naming body sensations, or they think like, if I feel this feeling, I'm going to burst into flames, right? I'm going to just spontaneously combust. They don't trust life much, do they? And they probably don't trust the process of healing. So you can use this hierarchy to help organize and guide your interventions. So again, here's kind of that order flipped around. So safe enough to feel, safe enough in their life, in the relationship with you and in their bodies. The ability to notice and name, which is the ability to notice and put language to feelings and sensations. This is the skill of interoception. The ability to feel and flex, which is the ability to tolerate feelings, feeling feelings and learning to regulate them. So feel and flex is like, I can tolerate this distress and I'm going to use skills. Somebody was like, I notice I'm feeling anxious, so I immediately like down a pint of vodka. They're kind of struggling to feel and flex, right? Because they're like, I'm just going to avoid it and run away. And then all of that leads to the ability to trust the process. Now, we'll talk about a couple of skills here together in the time that we have left. But one thing I want to note is that with this hierarchy, so I developed this hierarchy based on polyvagal theory. So this is really inspired by Stephen Porges's work. And one of the reasons that I developed this hierarchy is because a common question I receive from EMDR therapists is, how do I know when my client is ready to process maladaptive memories? How do I know that their nervous system is ready to take on that kind of next stage of work? Because if we go too fast and we try and work on processing those memories when the nervous system isn't ready, clients can feel really terrible afterwards. Like it doesn't work, the memory doesn't reprocess. It's just like really upsetting and overwhelming to the nervous system. Yeah, because maybe the client didn't have all the skills they needed to do that. So I developed this hierarchy to help EMDR clinicians navigate what does it mean to be prepared to reprocess maladaptive memories. But you can use this even if you're not an EMDR trained therapist, as you think about, how do I build resiliency in the autonomic nervous system? And you can use skills that would, maybe I use mindfulness, and mindfulness could address all three of these tiers. So it's not like these are finite kind of cinder blocks, concrete blocks where like, oh, these skills go into this bucket, these skills go into this bucket. But you're really thinking about, how do these sequentially line up and how can you plan interventions accordingly? So for example, if your client doesn't feel safe enough to feel, I'm probably not going to dive into like CBT thought stopping, right? I'm probably not going to dive into like really robust like IFS or ego states informed interventions. I might just really try and focus on creating safety in the relationship, because my client doesn't have to feel safe everywhere, but they have to feel safe with me, right? So how do I focus on bringing on more safety so that then my client is safe enough to feel, right? If my client really struggles, if I ask them, what are you noticing inside? And they're like, I don't know. Or they have a very limited emotional vocabulary, I know, okay, we need to learn some skills to be able to notice and name, right? We need some language. We need to be able to maybe do some body scans, progressive body relaxation, maybe some guided visualizations. Yoga nidra could be good. Yoga therapy could be good here. And then feeling and flexing, like learning, how do you really sit and tolerate emotions? And then how do you start to use skills to navigate that? And then I really see trust the process as not necessarily like a cluster of skills, but it is the outcome of all of this work. So I see trust the process as the outcome. Okay. So a couple of key skills that help to tone the vagus nerve and can help to build that autonomic resiliency. So breath work is a really common one. And we'll do one breath work exercise here together. Exercise, getting movement in your body is just a great way to exercise the vagus nerve, whether that's going for a walk, going to yoga, doing qigong, going and lifting weights, whatever that is. But exercising is a great way to exercise the nervous system. The reason that breath work and exercise are so powerful on a physiological level is because the vagus nerve is directly connected to our heart rate. So your vagus nerve is actually you have two internal pacemakers and your vagus nerve is one of them. So your vagus nerve increases your heart rate and decreases your heart rate. So think about when you get triggered and activated and you get sympathetic arousal, what happens to your heart rate? Goes up, right? And when you feel really shut down and depressed and kind of down in the dumps, your heart rate usually slows down. So what does breath work do? Breath work is a way to influence your heart rate, isn't it? Yeah. Breath work directly correlates with your heart. If you go and you exercise, if you lift weights at the gym, what are you doing? You're increasing your heart rate. And then when you pause between sets, your heart rate slows down. If you go for a brisk walk, you get your heart rate to increase and then you slow it down when you stop. So anything that exercises the heart increases and decreases heart rate in like a structured kind of intervening way is going to exercise the vagus nerve. Okay, because it's just exercising that natural pacemaker. Mindfulness is also a wonderful way to exercise the vagus nerve, but I usually try and start with my clients who are kind of at the bottom of that hierarchy. I usually start with just focusing on a safe relationship first and foremost, and then I'll focus on breath work, and I usually will bring in yoga therapy as well, because that's gonna, like, those are direct interventions with a physical body. Right? If I have somebody who comes in and they have some resiliency in their nervous system, then I might go to mindfulness. But like practicing mindfulness is really hard for some people who just can't even sit still, right? Whose bodies are so dysregulated. So looking at how do I start with like direct physical related interventions that change breath and heart rate. And then maybe I move into like mindfulness and guided imagery and yoga nidra and things like that that are a little bit more advanced. Wouldn't you agree? Like some of those skills are more advanced. So let's practice one of my favorite breath practices. This is not talked about in polyvagal theory, but all breath work relates back to like polyvagal interventions, okay? It's called the physiological sigh. Have any of you heard of the physiological sigh before? Oh, a couple of you. Okay, so the physiological sigh is like almost like a go-to for sure way for almost anyone to regulate their biology. Okay. There's usually very few things that you can say, like, this is going to work for just about everybody, but this works for like just about everybody. Okay. So I'm going to show you what it is, and then we're going to practice a couple of times together. Okay. So the physiological sigh is best if you have a deviated septum and can't breathe in through your nose. You can do it through your mouth, but it works best if you breathe in through your nose. So you want to start and you take a big breath in through your nose, and then you do another short breath, and then you open your mouth and sigh it out. Okay, so let's practice this 3 times together. Okay, and let's just first start by just taking a nice cleansing breath in and let it out. All right, take a big breath in through your nose. Another short one. Open mouth, side out. And again, breathe in through the nose. Short one. And side out. Do 2 more on your own. And take a moment now and just notice inside. And try naming what you're noticing. Words that are coming to my mind are smooth, quiet. I have an image like a still lake. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the physiological sigh. So we're getting to about the end of our time today. So I just wanted to check in if anyone wants to share what you noticed in the chat box with the physiological sigh. And when you're teaching people to notice a name, it's important that you're helping them find language that doesn't necessarily include like emotions. So one thing I use when I teach clients to notice a name is, how would you describe that to me? Like, describe anxiety to me as if I've never felt anxiety. So you're really learning to use like sensory descriptive words like calm, light, shallow, deep, dark, heavy, smooth, kind of things like that. Yeah. So Shelley shared feeling more present. So as we're at the end of our time today, I hope that you take just a couple of things with you. Okay. One is recognize that it's all neurobiology. Everything your clients, your patients are talking to you about, even everything you experience, is just data points that your nervous system is so helpfully offering you. Without those data points, you wouldn't have an opportunity to intervene. We can use polyvagal theory to build more resiliency in the autonomic nervous system. And EMDR helps us to reprocess those maladaptively stored memories so that autonomic dragon doesn't constantly get hijacked. If you'd like to connect with me or find me, you can find me at caseandco.com. I'm also on Instagram if you look up Rebecca Case or caseco.emdr. And you can get a copy of these slides by going to this QR code. I thank you all so very much for sharing space with me today. I really hope that this was helpful, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you, Rebecca. And since this is our last session, maybe we can just do 5 minutes of answering at least 1 or 2 questions, since there's no more session coming. I know some of you guys are really tired because you've been doing this all day, so just bear with us. 5 more minutes to just do Q&A before we close out. So we have a question from Paulette, and it has 7 upvotes, and her question is, if chronically in a dorsal vagal state, is it safe to engage in EMDR? Are there any precautions or guidelines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So if we're thinking about readiness to engage in EMDR, I really recommend that your client needs to be kind of up on that preparation hierarchy around that tier of feel and flex. And so if your client is chronically stuck in dorsal, they're probably not up in feel and flex. They might even be all the way down at like, I don't even think it's safe enough to feel. And so I'm so shut down. I'm so guarded. Like when we're in dorsal, we tend to not, we feel numb, right? We feel like an absence of feelings. Our mind is blank. And so if your client, if that's where they live, I would say, no, we're not ready to process memories. We need to try and come up so that we have some connection to ventral and we can feel feelings and notice and name them. So clients who are chronically stuck in dorsal or even chronically stuck in sympathetic, really think of that preparation hierarchy and where would you say they fall on the hierarchy? And if they're at the bottom, if they don't have the skill to notice a name and they can't feel and flex, they're probably not ready to reprocess memories. If you're an EMDR therapist in here, I'll say this, if you're not an EMDR therapist, this won't make sense, but there are some modified EMDR protocols that we can use when maybe people don't have this incredibly resilient nervous system, but we still need to be safe enough to feel and notice a name. And so sometimes we can use modified protocols like the flash technique. CPOS is another one, CIPOS. The EMDR 2.0 are some examples of how you could offer like little doses of EMDR without activating the whole memory network and overwhelming system. Great question.
Thank you. We'll do one more and then we'll close it out. This one is from Penelope. Many autistic people and people with PTSD find it difficult to notice feelings or more than, say, 3 different emotions. Can either of these groups of people be helped to evolve enhance introspection, in your view, and from the research?
Okay, great question. Yes. Yeah, so we're looking at kind of two different causalities there, right? So if somebody falls on the spectrum, that is typically due to just kind of physiological wiring, right? That's about neurodivergence and how your nervous system was uniquely wired. With PTSD is the outcome of something that happened and changed the functioning of your neurobiology, right? So we want to look at, absolutely, I think no matter if it's PTSD or a physiological, like neurodivergent presentation, we can always learn more skills. We can learn more skills, feel feelings and sensations. And we're just recognizing that the causality of some of those challenges can look vastly different, right? The etiology. So with a PTSD diagnosis, I think that that is a necessary part of healing, right? PTSD is such a disembodying experience. And so healing is about learning to embody your body again, right? With the spectrum diagnosis piece, we have to be mindful of, what is the nervous system, how is the nervous system wired, and what is due to, a wound or an injury like trauma causes, and what is, this is just how this person's nervous system functions. Now, the interesting thing with polyvagal theory is that there's research that demonstrates that applying specific polyvagal informed interventions that help to exercise the vagus nerve actually has been shown to decrease some of those specific symptoms we see with folks on the spectrum, like sensitivity to various sensory overwhelm and stimulation, becoming more socially engaged. And so it's really interesting because the vagus nerve seems to have a pretty big connection with presentations with a spectrum diagnosis, and that using polyvagal informed interventions can actually decrease some of the severity of some of those symptoms. So really interesting research. If you want to geek out on that, you could go to Google Scholar and put in vagus nerve stimulation and autism, or the Safe and Sound protocol. Safe and Sound protocol is developed by Stephen Porges, and it's a listening protocol that helps to calm the autonomic nervous system by engaging the vagus nerve. And it's really growing in its research. It's really fascinating. So, great question.
And I believe Steven is actually coming up with some type of music that helps to interact with the
That's it.
polyvagal. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah,
So what
yep. So
he?
that's the Safe and Sound protocol.
Oh,
Yep.
sweet. Yeah. The last time he
Yeah,
was on, he was talking about it and how he's working with like a musical engineer to like create CDs and soundscapes and things like that. So there you
yeah,
go.
it's really neat. And if you wanted to get trained in it, the company that manages his Safe and Sound protocol is called Unite. I'm putting this in the chat box for y'all. And Stephen Porges is the one who developed the Safe and Sound protocol. And then to get trained in the Safe and Sound protocol, you can go to Unite, and they kind of oversee that part. So, yeah.
Awesome. This was so amazing, Rebecca. The way you simplify these big terminologies and polyvagal theory and EMDR is like, for me at least, I feel like you were speaking in layman terms. I was like, oh wow,
Oh,
I get it now. It's all coming together. It's making sense. It's landing. So thank you so much. I'm sure there's other people that also feel the same way as well. Okay, you guys, this is
yeah,
where
you are so
we,
welcome. Thank you.
oh, of course, thank you so much. This is where we bid farewell to each other. Thank you guys so much for being with us